All of literature is one of two stories. A man goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town. Leo Tolstoy. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks, and I'm your host, Ramya Amudan. The weekly quote, picked by Aamer Khan, who's joining us later on today, is from the book Thank You for Listening. It is one of the book recommendations for the Aamer Evening Book Club, and the one that didn't make the cut for the Kelly and Ramya Book Club. But anyway, this quote, the book is by Julia Whelan, and is it an oversimplification or an actual truth? So, of course, at first listen to this quote, I was like, that's funny. And then I started to think about it and went, actually, that makes a lot of sense. You know, stories and formulas, right? Creating an outline, creating this is where it starts, this is where it goes, that this is how you end up there. This ease of kind of not having to make a decision on how to formula your story, your book, how to outline it, how to make something work, is that of following somebody else who's already done it. And we're talking years and centuries of people who've done it. Protecting the journey of the story even is kind of a cool concept, right? That you don't have to start from scratch and that you enjoy that you're bringing this back to the table, something that somebody else has already brought. And as I said, place to start, play to end, and how we get there is the process. Let's take a look at the CELA homepage. This is the Center for Equitable Library Access, and we get there by visiting celalibrary.ca. And on that site is a catalog of thousands and hundreds of thousands of audiobooks and DAISY options for books. And on the homepage, we have the featured titles, 3 featured titles that have been up there now for, I'd say, the month of May. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice from Murderers by Jesse Q. Sutanto. Mysteries and Crime Stories, and this is something that Teresa from the Center for Equitable Library Access had read and recommended. So that's one. The second one is The Climate Book by Greta Thunberg, and this is, of course, about the environment. The last one up there is The White Lady by Jacqueline Winspire. This is a historical fiction, so check out these featured titles, but of course you can expand beyond that on CELA and search for your favorite listens or recommendations by categories, by title and author searches, and then they have some award winners and things like that as well. Check out their blog also because there's lots to get inspired by from reading there. Nasreen, we're coming over to you now for some, summer listen ideas?
From romance to thrillers to memoirs, Country Living posted a list of 27 new audiobooks to listen to this summer. And I'm not going to list, obviously, 27 of them, but I want to highlight some of the audiobooks that is making it on this list. Number 1, The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece, a novel by Tom Hanks. A very popular one. The second one is Queen Charlotte by Julia Quinn and Shonda Rhimes. And another one is Hello Beautiful. I heard this one is really good. Hello Beautiful by Dear Edward. And another one, the fourth is Happy Place by Emily Henry. And the fifth is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. So I want to know what your genre go-to for the summer is.
Oh, usually romance, and usually light romance. Very funny, nothing serious. We want to get that summer vibe in with some laughs and lightheartedness. So I tend to go towards romance always. You?
I go for romance. I feel like romance is always my go-to. It's easy. It's a light read. I'm not much of a thriller person, so it's either comedy or romance regardless.
And now you have 27 more books to add to the reading list.
I want to read the Tom Hanks one.
Yeah? Yeah, well, Hello Beautiful is the Kelly and Ramya Book Club for May, so we're in the midst of reading that. Give you a review on that after.
Yeah. Let's give each other a review because Tom Hanks is one of my favorite actors. I just want to highlight that. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a great one. Can't wait.
Can't wait either. And can't wait to have our conversation with Aamer Khan in a second. He's got some classic literature and some romance to talk about. This is AMI Audiobook Review. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks, and we're moving into the conversation with Aamer Khan. Aamer is an audiobook worm, and he joins us at the end of each month, and he shares his 3 reading highs and lows. We get into authors and the books that Aamer has read. Now, sometimes he reads a gazillion books, and we have to pick 3, and other times he says he didn't read as much. Now, what does as much mean for you, Aamer?
It means I probably didn't get through 3, or I didn't get through 3 that I can actually talk about. So
those are 2 different things. So you went through 10, but you can't talk about any but 2.5.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start plugging away at these month's highlights, or this month's highlights. Where do you want to start? Thank you for listening. This is one of the book club choices of your book club.
Yes, for Amer's Evening Book Club, this was voted on a couple of months ago. It came a close second to another book, so we just did both of them in a row. Thank You for Listening is written by Julia Whelan, who narrated this book as well. So she's a writer and a narrator, which I always think is cool. And the book is actually about an audio narrator who's sort of jaded a little bit about love, and is sort of looking at life in different ways. So it's an interesting book because it's put together in a couple of different ways. The book starts with a quote, which you read out, and every chapter starts with a few quotes, whether it's from Leo Tolstoy or June French. The book seems to be a tribute to June French, who is a romance writer, and she has all sorts of really interesting quotes that every chapter sort of starts with. And the book sort of starts off as a sort of standard rom-com, very tongue-in-cheek, just like the quote from the beginning. And you're sort of laughing, and then it sort of morphs into something a lot more serious, which is nice. It's something unexpected, and it sort of flows naturally into that space. We learn that the main character has an eye patch, and we don't know why, and that's revealed later. And then we realize that the main character is also struggling with her own sort of identity and how to live her life, and how she perceives herself as well as how others perceive her. So again, this book is not for the faint of heart. If you blush a little bit too easily, this book is probably not for you.
Oh.
So it is. There are quite a lot of scenes and humor which are a little bit past the line in my view from PG-13 sort of parlance. So
did this book captivate you right away, or did you have to ease into it?
Yes. I dared some of my friends to read 10 minutes of it and put it down.
Yeah, I was one of those friends.
Yep. I think people took me a little bit too seriously and didn't pick it up, but definitely it captures your attention very quickly, and then it sort of starts to mellow out towards the end. There's a bit of drama, but it's all justified. You don't get a sense of that it's not real. There's a lot of the book that really gets into how you think and how you perceive the world, and how the main characters do the same. There's obviously a lot of rom-com elements in terms of coincidences, and the author does a good job of sort of calling those out and making fun of them while she's writing about it and putting it together. So it's not a lot to dissect and to take apart and review, but there are layers to the book which make it enjoyable in my view, and I'm really looking forward to doing the discussion with the Amer's Evening Book Club this upcoming Tuesday.
It's interesting when you say the book mellows out as it goes along, because sometimes that means it gets boring. That's not the case for this, though, right?
No, I mean, especially with romance books, you get sort of different ways they unfold. The first Alicia Rai book I read went straight romance in the first couple of pages, and it was sort of shock and awe, and everything else after that was more reasonable. This one starts off, like I said, a lot more tongue-in-cheek and humorous, then mellows out to more serious topics. But you do get a sense that the book is going somewhere and crescendoing towards a conclusion. which is something you want in a book, right? I mean, you don't want to be in a spot where you're like, I don't know where this is going, and I still don't know where it's going, and that
Right.
persists.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it seems like a reasonable book to check out, especially if you're interested in getting into something right away. And also, I think that this genre lends itself to more people wanting to try it than not. Would you say that's
Yeah,
all right?
yes, and I think it's a topic that hasn't been overly done either. I
Oh,
mean, the
okay.
book is about an audio narrator, so you get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in terms of what it takes to be an audio narrator and how that process sort of looks and what that industry is sort of like. So that I found an interesting sort of backdrop to this whole story that you get to see for those of us who love audiobooks a little bit behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't even think about that aspect of it. Just something kind of feeling insightful from that angle.
Insightful. And for Amar's Evening Book Club, we did Stephen King's Misery not too long ago.
Yes, yep.
And the interesting part is that book is about an author who is captured by one of his fans.
Mm-hmm.
And then to read this book about an author who's audio, narrating their own book is sort of interesting to continue on that theme.
On that thread, exactly. All right. So that's one that we can check out. What's the second one that you checked out?
So I sort of called this session of mine Unexpected Romance, because until I picked the three books for this session, I didn't realize that they were all romance novels. So
Okay.
I sort of
Sure you didn't. Unconsciously, maybe not.
unconsciously, like, thank you for listening. It says it's a romance, but when I start reading, I'm like, I don't know, is it?
Okay.
And it's
Look at these titles. Of course this is romance. Come on.
Thank you for listening. I don't know.
Okay, not that one. Not that one. But the second one for
romance
sure.
to me. Second one for sure, which is That Perfect Someone. And this one I think I came across because I was looking at the Colleen Hoover list, and it just happened to have a similar title, and I'm like, okay, let's try it.
But this one's Joanna Lindsey.
Joanna Lindsey is the author. She tends to have romance sort of all over the place, but mostly in historical fiction. She also has a sci-fi series and a couple of other things. She is definitely not a PG-13 author. She tends to write with some male domineering qualities in her books for the most part. And this is something I found in other romance books, and it doesn't hold true that it's from male authors. It can be male or female authors, but this sort of thread of male domineering, which I'm not sure I understand. I don't think it does anybody any favors on the male or female side of the spectrum, but just a fair warning that her writing does tend to be on that sort of slant. This book, not so much. This one is a little bit more even in terms of that aspect. But it's a historical fiction book. The premise is sort of standard rom-com, which is hilarious. The book starts off with, a young woman who was actually betrothed to someone to be married from birth, but she's, all of 18 or 19 or whatever the age is in Victorian times where she's supposed to be married. And she's just thought about having the man declared dead because nobody has seen him in 10 years, when she runs into him at a ball in London. And she doesn't know who he is until she gets up close and realizes this is the guy that she was promised to marry. So most of the rest of the book is both of them trying to figure out how not to marry each other because neither can stand each other, even since when they were a kid. So it's not your standard, I was on chapter 3. I'm like, oh, they met each other. Okay, now they're going to fall in love. But what's the rest of the book? I don't understand. And they're like, oh, no, they're trying to figure out how not to get married.
Plot twist.
So, yeah, definite plot twist, and definitely something more original than what you see commonly. So that's why I picked this one. If you're into historical romance, if you're not squeamish about romance novels, this is probably something you can check out. On the same level as Sapphire, which is a book I talked about the last time I was on the show as well.
Okay, no spoilers, I guess, but actually, no, another question. Historical part of the historical romance. Can we get into that?
Yeah, I mean, this book is set in Victorian times. I think a lot of romance authors like that aspect in terms of, horse-drawn carriages and sort of the romance of the era, so to speak, in terms of the setting. So there are descriptions of that and how life is like and what is expected. You have certain, you know, for lack of a better word, rich people sort of things going on, and I think a lot of authors really enjoy embellishing that, and it's definitely done here, where this young
Mm.
lady has inherited a fortune from her father, and she's been running the business, but she can't do that long term because again, it wasn't allowed or whatever at that time. So she needs to either find a husband or do something else. So
But the man, is he also experiencing wealth?
he
Or is that
the
part of too
man
much
is
spoilers?
has no, I mean, I think suffices to say that he has daddy issues. So
Okay.
he does not get along with his father at all, which is part of the reason why he's been away for so long. So he has a different sort of issue of what's going on in his life and how he's trying to deal with it.
I guess this is kind of like the opposite of the Romeo and Juliet effect, right? Where it's you were written in the stars or meant to be plopped together, and then they're like, "Oh no, that's not going to work out."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or yeah, and a lot of this is about, they didn't like each other from the start, and there's different reasons why, but neither of them were aware of the other's reasons.
Hmm.
So the book does a good job of sort of leading the reader on in terms of bringing those to light slowly throughout the storyline.
Was a lot of comedy used throughout the book?
No,
Oh,
this
interesting.
book does have comedy, but nowhere near something like Thank You for Listening.
Mm.
It's much more of a romance book than a comedic one.
The reason why I ask is just thinking, two people who are trying their hardest not to be together sounds like
Yeah.
a great place for comedy.
Yeah, and those types of scenes were hilarious, where they suddenly realize that they're who each other is, and sort of break apart and be like, oh, it's you, what
Oh
happened?
no, not
But
again.
yeah, yeah,
All right. Okay, well, that's a good one. So, kind of going from historical romance to an absolute classic. This is not the first time you picked up this book, is it? The one we're going to talk about.
no, Pride and Prejudice is an absolute classic
Mm-hmm.
by Jane Austen. um, I'm sort of taking a chance here because I know it's very near and dear to a lot of people.
That's all right. Be real
There's
with us.
been countless movies, remakes, plays, you name it, it's been done. Whether it's Bollywood, Hollywood, or other nationalities have taken on these themes. I mean, it's a classic because again, it's from the 1800s. So you have these historical romances like we were just talking about, by Johanna Stork, or Johanna Lindsay, I should say. And you have this one, which was actually written in that time period of sort of Victorian England. This is not for, this is a book that you have to be able to tolerate pretentiousness. I mean, the name of the game in this book is a lot about pretentiousness. I mean, you have this whole sort of theatrical lifestyle of saying not what you mean, but slighting people passive aggressively throughout the entire novel.
Mm-hmm.
The book centers around a family with five daughters, and all of them are eligible to be married, or most of them are, I should say. And the story and the first part of it sort of begins with the first two having prospects, and you have this sort of high-strung mother figure whose only mission in life is to get her daughters married. You have the complete polar opposite of a father who is extremely well-read, has no tolerance for politics or drama or anything like that, but is also incapable of instructing anyone of anything. So I'm about halfway through right now, which is sort of hilarious because this is about as far as I got the last time I attempted this
Oh,
book.
I thought you hadn't made it this far before.
I'm quite a bit past, but yeah, in terms of the actual book, I'm about the same place, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay. But this time you're actually enjoying it.
The first half I enjoyed. I think the storyline is flagging a bit now. Again, this is a classic from 1800, so attention spans, I guess, were a little bit longer then.
They didn't have TikTok
So
to worry about.
didn't have TikTok to worry about, and I think people just expect things to happen. Whereas in the sort of where the middle part where I'm at right now, they've moved from one location to the other, but in terms of advancing the storyline, not much has happened.
Right.
So I'm being assured that it is a setup for something more profound, and I'm not sure I believe people anymore, but we'll see.
I don't know. I don't know about profound. I will tell you also that I have not read Pride and Prejudice. I picked it up. I thought, this is taking a while. We're just getting to know people still, and that was a while of that. So, anyways, I might pick it up now that you enjoyed it, because you and I both had the discussion of how are we ever going to read Pride and Prejudice and actually take it in after attempting to already. But I think, does it give you an appreciation for the writer, for the appreciation
Definitely.
of that timeline of a book? What?
It's definitely cleverly written.
Okay.
I mean, there's certain passages. I think in the first couple of pages of the book, there's a description of the father, and it is just so dead on accurate. You're just like, oh, in 2 lines, you basically summed up this guy's entire character for the entire book. So definitely quality writing. You do need to be patient with it. It's something I first attempted in school, but it was never really discussed to any length. I think we spent like 1 session on it in class, or 1 class on it, and I think it needs more. I think there's more to this book to be dissected, and I think you can enjoy it more if you're reading it with people that understand what makes this book great.
And I mean, Jane Austen, she's just an incredible writer, studied all over the place forever because of her writing. So this is not a surprise. But I think it's more, the question I ask myself is, how are young people going to pick up something so classic? It's like asking people if they've read Gone with the Wind. Most people
Yeah.
are like, no, and I will not.
And I think the answer is in chunks. I think this is not a book that you want to read all the way through continuously for 4 days or 5 days, which is usually my style, as you know. So, I think it is one of those books where you can read sort of part 1 and then come back and read part 2 and come back and read part 3. Almost like watching a show on Netflix, but not binging it,
Yeah. But I think the challenge is, because it's written a while back, you have the language, you have the attention span that you talked about. So even if you're reading it in bits and pieces, you still have to consider, how long are we going to stick in to
How
this?
long is sticking, and it requires paying attention.
Yeah.
The writing is not
Full
so much the
attention.
Old English, but it's done so well that, if you're not paying attention, you'll miss what she's actually trying to say. In terms of Jane Austen. So that's, if you blink in some of the passages where, I just attention wandered somewhere and I'm like, wait, how did that happen? How did we got to go back and read again.
So out of the 3 books that we discussed, did you feel a sense of flow between the reads this month, or were you just picking up whatever you could, aside from the book club picks, obviously?
I think it was just picking up whatever was there. I didn't consciously look at these books. I've been wanting to pick up a classic for quite some time, and then someone mentioned this one, and I'm like, okay. I had originally downloaded Jane Eyre, which I might
Great book.
read later, but ended up switching to Pride and Prejudice and taking it from there. And I think the other thing that made this one a lot more readable for me is that the first time I actually read it in print, and the human narrated version on Sela is fantastic. The voices are done excellently. There's no sort of language barrier of the accents or anything. It's actually really well done.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Aamer. We'll chat with you next month, and maybe you'll have 10 books then that you have to scramble to pick from, because they were all so good.
Hopefully not all romance next time.
Yeah, we'll see. It is summer after all, and June. Okay.
Indeed.
Aamer Khan joining us. He's our audiobook worm at the end of the month, and the 3 books that we discussed from his picks today. Thank you for listening, by Julia Whelan. That Perfect Someone by Johanna Lindsay, and Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. We're Back next week with our friends from the Center for Equitable Library Access, Karen and Teresa. And until then, I'm Ramia Amuddin, the host of the show, with technical producer Nasreen Abdel Majid. And we'll be back. And until next time, happy audiobook listening.